Back on the Boulevard, Monday, May 8th, as always, here to prove to you there is no such thing as football season. We are presented by the Believe Network. Wanted to hop on here live on a Monday night and give you guys a little mini-sode. Of course, no games to really break down from this past weekend, which was tough. Zook and I really missed sitting around watching football or going on the tour. But these two teams, the Arlington Renegades and the DC Defenders, certainly deserve a week off. They've been at it since the beginning of January in training camp. The Defenders out of the north, the Renegades out of the south, gearing up for that XFL championship game. And of course, we're going to have all the coverage for you on our Thursday show. That's going to be a full-length XFL championship game preview. For now, I am joined by the producer, the director, and the owner of the humble abode we call Studio Z, Chris Zook, on a Monday night. Some cool things. Tell the viewers a little bit about what we might be getting into tonight.
We're going to pick an all Springball Boulevard team.
So this was consensus between Zook and I. Obviously, we went back and forth. We talked about a ton of our favorite players during the Freshie Awards. Now kind of narrowing it down, 11 offense, 11 defense, and 4 on special teams. So another 26 players tonight to honor. A lot of them we've already honored. And we might just have something else special for you coming up for the quarterback of our All Boulevard team.
We have something special, and I'm going to throw some curveball questions at Matt tonight.
Wow.
That he has not heard.
That might be harder than a mailbag.
I think it's going to be.
Because it's coming from Zook, so why not? Let's have a little fun tonight. Before we get into the offense, I know we teased today on Twitter. We have a special guest coming up. Before we get into the XFL offense, let's talk a little bit about the defensive side of the ball. We covered a lot of these guys during the Freshie Awards on Friday. Let's give out our All Boulevard team, Zook, for defensive linemen. I guess we can go ahead and start with. These are guys who were just extremely difficult to stop for offensive lines this season. We start with LaRon Stokes in Vegas, racked up, I think, 7 or 8 tackles for loss, underrated all season. St. Laurent on Instagram, love that. Definitely. I mean, Vegas had studs all across the defense, really, when you look at it, Zook, and Big Laurent inside was one of them. Delonte Scott, I mean, this guy won our Freshie for Throwback Player. He was a nominee for Quarterback Nightmare. I mean, Lonte, the twin, his twin Mike, playing with him there in San Antonio. Delonte was a real stud for the Brahmas all year. Davin Bellamy of the DC Defenders, just a natural pass rusher with a knack of getting to the quarterback this season. And rounding things out with Travis Feeney, who had himself a hell of a year for the St. Louis Battlehawks. 4 guys that are really going to have a good shot at the NFL. I think LaRon Stokes, more of that interior lineman, where you're going to get Scott, Bellamy, and Feeney. Definitely more of the pass rusher type, but all big guys, all really super talented and fast, and with a lot of accolades and NFL in each of their futures. Zook, anybody stand out to you along the defensive line this year, watching all these different games?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Delonte Scott, I mean, ball hawk.
Yeah.
Running like crazy. I mean, you covered it earlier in the other show. I mean, there's not much more I could say about these guys. But, yeah, Scott, I think he has a legitimate shot getting to the next level.
Absolutely. Scott was a stud up front all year. Now moving into the second level of the defense. If you want to go linebackers here again, another Vegas Viper. Pita Taumo-Penu was the official XFL Defensive Player of the Year. He won our Freshie Award for Quarterback Nightmare. Actually, speaking of Pita, Zook, he actually was missing 2 sacks on his record. They went through, they recalculated all the stats. Pita actually had 9.5 sacks, so that would have been tied for the XFL lead. Got to give him credit where it's due, and the directors of player personnel and the head coaches deciding on Pita as the official Defensive Player of the Year. Trent Harris, another guy who, according to Evan Wilsmore of XFL News Hub, who covers the Roughnecks over there, getting 8, 9 NFL teams interested in him. He played on several teams in the NFL in the past, and he's going to be a stud at the next level. Jordan Williams, a guy who has not played in the NFL previously, but certainly will be. 89 tackles this season, led the league in solo. Total tackles and tackles for loss, was just all over the field. He was our DPOY. And had to throw Francis Bernard in there. I mean, this was a guy who was suspended for 2 games, Zook. Only got an 8-game season. Still finished third or fourth in the league in solo tackles, had a ton of tackles for loss. What stood out for me with him, the solo tackles. I mean, he didn't have many assisted. This guy did a lot of work on his own. Bernard was a complete package. I think he was a nominee for our throwback player too. Kind of has that motor about him. So how to throw Bernard in there. And finally, rounding things out, we'll go to our defensive backs here. Michael Joseph, obviously huge pick sixes this season that helped vault his team to wins. Ajane Harris led the league in interceptions. And Devontae Bosby, a guy that's really not getting a whole lot of love, but that Arlington pass defense is scary. Like, they're for real. And Bosby, from week 1 when he had the pick 6 to beat Vegas all the way to now playing in the XFL championship game, had a late pick against Houston that sealed it in the South title game. He's the real deal out there in Arlington, and he deserved more love than he got. Obviously, can only give it to 11 guys. Zook, I guess go ahead and throw some curveballs at me here. What do you got as far as our All-Boulevard team and maybe some extra questions that you might have?
We're not jumping there yet. Let's talk about some special teams.
See, how do I forget the brand? Jeez, I mean, I almost skipped right over special teams. Shame on me for that. Thanks for keeping me on track here on a Monday. Darius Shepard, what can you say? I mean, over 800, 900 kick return yards for Shepard. He did it in the receiving game as well. Just XFL Special Teams Player of the Year, had to be on there. Parker Romo nailed one from 57. I think it was 17 of 19 on field goal attempts. Had some huge kicks. Brad Wing, 72-yard punt. Really a lot of opportunities in that San Antonio offense to punt. But Brad Wing, I mean, it wasn't really his fault. He was only just doing his job out there. So even though he got more punts than anybody in the league, he still had the highest average and the most inside the 20. And then Zook's guy, Kelvin McKnight. Where's the love for Kelvin? I mean, we watched him against Orlando, and he didn't house one, but he was close every time he touched the ball. And Kelvin led the league in punt return yards, and I don't think he got enough love. So Kelvin McKnight, another guy, dangerous in open space, and didn't really get much love in the Seattle pass game, but they used them on special teams, and that could be important in the NFL. So that is our defense and our special teams for All-Boulevard. I think we just named 15 players, Zook. Go ahead, grill me with some questions, I guess, here, and we'll go off the cuff and see if I can live up to the Zook bank of knowledge here.
I hope so. I want to know which defensive coach can actually get an NFL shot. Is there one?
Well, we know before the season, right? Jim Haslett was getting some interest. I think it was the Atlanta Falcons defensive coordinator position. I don't think Haslett goes back to the NFL. He talked to us in the final press conference in that North Championship game about being interested in staying with Seattle and obviously having to talk to his staff. Defensive coaches. I mean, you'd like to see Greg Williams back in the league. Not sure if that would happen. I'm trying to think outside the box, maybe outside of coordinators here. Joey Porter, linebacker coach for San Antonio. His son, Joey Porter Jr., just got drafted to the Pittsburgh Steelers, which should have been a first-round pick, but it was the first pick in the second round, which actually number 32. Maybe Joey Porter did a good enough job. Think about the linebackers they had in San Antonio. Jordan Williams, Delonte Scott was an edge rusher. They had some great players and across that whole defense. So, yeah, I think Joey Porter. Let's go Joey Porter for finding himself back in the NFL.
Which defensive players have the best probability to make a 53-man roster?
Trent Harris. Got to be one of them. Obviously, getting interest from over a dozen NFL teams already. You got to think Pita Talmo-Penu, right? Like, absolutely NFL pass rusher talent. If you go back and watch his tape, some of the things that he was able to do, the swim moves, the underneaths, just the pure speed, I think Pita. And then you got to go like a defensive back. Bosby is one, but it's tough with DBs, right? Because the guys that make the All-Boulevard team are the ones that get picks. But like we just talked about Joey Porter, second-round NFL draft pick, only had one interception in college, right? So Luke Barco is another one from San Antonio. They didn't really throw his way much, but he was a lockdown corner. He didn't really rack up any stats because nobody was throwing his way, but I think he's one. So yeah, just a couple of guys.
So let's piggyback on something we were talking about earlier. Yeah. We're looking at the sack leaders in the XFL. What we at 9.5 as the tie at the top? Is
well,
that what
Pita had a couple unofficial sacks that they missed.
So
So yeah, Trent
can
Harris.
those sacks translate in the NFL if they make a roster?
Yeah, I think so. I think Trent Harris could be a contributor. You're always looking for extra pass rushers in the NFL. It's a position that's kind of hard to develop and coach, and you're just trying to look to plug guys in. I know there's a lot of pass rushers that get drafted in the NFL. You think about a Tyree Wilson get taken as a top pick. Some of the other guys that were drafted highly in the NFL. Yeah, I think so. I think Trent Harris can make an impact. And Peta, I mean, he's got all the upside in the world.
One more defensive question, because this is an important one to me. Is there an NFL-ready corner in the league?
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys that we talked about, I think Michael Joseph, Jane A. Harris, Devontae Bosby, obviously the guys in the All-Boulevard team. Outside of that, Luke Barco is one that we just brought up. I think he's ready. I think he got invited by the Browns. Correct me if I'm wrong.
So you think if they make the league, are they covering a slot guy? What's their role if they get in the NFL?
Yeah, maybe a lot of nickel corner and a lot of packages with 6 DBs in there. But you never know, right? You had like a Kevontae Turpin who came out of the other league and he became a pretty big contributor. So you never know. Special teams could be something that they contribute on. But yeah, I mean, we'll see how these players develop. A lot of them will get a crack in NFL minicamp, and then you have injuries as well. So you never know if one of these guys is going to have to start. But yeah, that's what I would go with there. I think that there's a good group of defensive players. I did say in the Freshie Awards, there will be more defensive players that make the NFL, I believe, than offensive when it comes down to it. I just think that's a bigger need and more XFL talent on that side of the ball. And, offensive talent is just so hard to crack in the NFL. So I think some guys will show out on defense for sure. Well, that's our defensive All-Boulevard team. We promised you a special guest. He was the Freshie Award winner for Offensive Player of the Year, best tandem with Hakeem Butler, and our most valuable player, AJ McCarron. We talked about everything from his future plans with the XFL, with the NFL, some of his college days at Alabama, what he thinks the league can do to upgrade for year 2, and obviously reflecting on his experience, everything he went through from week 1 to the craziness in the tiebreaker scenario down to week 10. We've been waiting for this one all year. Guys, enjoy AJ McCarron, and we'll be right back on the Boulevard with our offensive All-Boulevard team. From Mobile to T-Town, where he won back-to-back national titles as a starting quarterback for the Alabama Crimson Tide, spent 8 years in the NFL chasing his dream, now thriving with the St. Louis Battlehawks. Our Freshie Award for Offensive Player of the Year, best tandem with Hakeem Butler, and our most valuable player, AJ McCarron. Welcome to Springball Boulevard. Thanks for joining us, man.
I appreciate you, Matty.
So right off the bat, our Freshie Award for most valuable player. Obviously, the league not honoring an MVP, taking a different approach. We wanted to make sure we were recognizing all the players. I saw some other accolades from some other media that you got handed out as well. What does it mean to you to get recognized as our Freshie Award MVP and then some of the others as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome, dude. I learned that the league wasn't doing that. I think going into the last week, one of our media personnel, I can't remember if it was our main guy, Brian, or Christina, another girl that helps us out, but basically told me, hey, the league doesn't have a MVP. And I was like, wow, that's shocking. So it was, but to have, the honor of winning these awards from, media like yourself and other media members, I think it shows, the amount of work that I put in and us as a team that we put in, because listen, you can't achieve anything by yourself, especially in this game. And I had a hell of a team and hell of a coaching staff that helped, all this come about. And I can't thank them enough for it.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to honor you, man. It was a great season. I want to start off the interview with my first memory of AJ McCarron.
Uh-oh.
So this is September 10th, 2011. We're actually in the same place. Do you remember where you were that day?
September 10th, 2011. That had to be, was that at Penn State?
That was sharp memory. So you're making your first big time start at Alabama.
Yeah.
You're on the road in State College. Me and 108,000 other maniacs came into that day thinking we were going to rattle this kid. There's no way you can make your first start at Penn State, right? Like that's a quarterback's worst nightmare. Well,
and it was a whiteout.
It didn't work out. I was going to say it had all the tools. It's like, how's he going to perform? I mean, Bama whooped us the year before that down there in Tuscaloosa. So not only a revenge game, but now you're coming in, first start in, I guess you'd say like the Power 5 now, but first start in major college football. And I thought you handled yourself pretty well. What was going through your head when you step out there and you see that environment?
Listen, I still to this day, people ask about coolest places to play, and Penn State was unbelievable. I remember coming down, leaving our hotel, driving down, the big hill or whatever, and the stadium sits down like in the middle of mountains basically, and just seeing all the white shirts all over the place, and the fact that we were wearing white, so like most of our fans blended in with that. But that was an unbelievable experience for me. I knew that we had a good team that year. I just had to take care of the football and then make plays when they asked me to, and especially that early in the season, kind of just grow as the season goes on. But I tell you what, I still talk about the fan base there, and what's the song? We were winning by a good amount towards the end, but all the fans stayed there and they were still singing. What is it? Sweet Caroline.
Sweet Caroline.
Yeah. And still watching that it's so different from most, SEC schools. Like SEC schools start losing. I mean, most of the fans are out of there, especially towards the end of the game. But seeing that, everybody like lock arms and sway in the stadium, like that was still unreal. And then that being Joe Pa's last game to be head coach before all the the stuff went down. So it was just an unreal experience, and something I will always remember and cherish for sure.
Yeah, and on that first drive, Penn State moving the ball a little bit, settle for a field goal. You guys come out. Thought we had you for a second. The stadium was loud, but as the game went on, you progressed, and obviously Coach Saban going into halftime said he think you were doing a pretty good job. So I had to bring up that memory. While we're on the topic of college football, you guys were the first to go back-to-back in the BCS era, and then nobody had done it for a decade until Georgia just did it now. What are your thoughts on the 12-team playoff era that's going to be coming up here in 2024?
Man, my thing, Matty, is when is enough enough? Like, that they got away from the BCS era because the third place team was pissed off that the computer algorithm and everything that it goes down to, like, they weren't in. So, all right, now you move to a 4-team playoff and you create this playoff system. Well, now it just goes to the 5th team is just pissed off and that they're not in. So it's going to be the same thing, I think, just happening over and over. Like, all right, you're going to 12 teams. So all of a sudden now the 13th team, they're in an argument about, hey, well, why isn't the 13th team in? They're better than the 10th team or the 11th team. Like, so I just don't know, like, how do you solve that issue, and when is enough enough? And then, I mean, how many games are you going to play? Like, now you're getting into an NFL type season, pushing all these games. I think you kill the bowl game, the reputation of bowls, because now these people aren't going to travel. Like say that, I think it's the first 4 teams or something get a bye is the format, and then the rest of them, the first round's played at home. So are the fan base is actually going to travel, because now it's not a destination that could be a vacation. You're going to somebody's actual campus. So I think you lose the love of the bowl games a little bit doing this many teams. But listen, the NCAA has been all over the place in the last couple of years with this transfer portal and NIL deal. I really thought that the NCAA could have solved this whole issue by just, your tuition check, instead of it being $1,500 a month to every kid. The NCAA is making it billions of dollars. So why not just say, hey, every kid's going to now make $5,000 a month? And you would have solved the issue. You wouldn't have certain players making millions of dollars or all these big time schools, because they thought it was going to level the playing field for these smaller schools. And all it did was help, like Coach Saban said, help the bigger schools, because they got the most money, they got the deeper pockets. And for a company like Mercedes or Apple or all these Beats by Dre, like, it's easier for those schools to come in and want to be a part of a big time school rather than a small school and tag their name with that program. So I think it's all over the place. Hopefully they can figure it out, though.
Yeah, it's been wild. And also, I looked at the schedule for it. They're still going to play conference title games, obviously, then take a week break. So we were looking at it because we're Penn State football season ticket holders. You could potentially have a playoff game in State College with miserable weather, December 22nd. That's the first round. So if you're a fan of a team that doesn't get a first round bye, you could potentially have a home game or an away game if you choose to travel. Then you're going to have your New Year's 6 be the quarterfinals. So you got to go to Arizona, New Orleans, wherever.
Right.
Then the week after is the semifinal, which is going to be the usual CFP. So maybe Miami, Atlanta, something like that. And then the national title, if you make it that far. So that's insane. How are fans going to do that? It's like bowl games were perfect because it was like you could go, that was your big destination. Right.
Right.
And even I assume with the 14 playoff, it's tough sometimes, but yeah, it's going to be wild. I don't know. I'm only excited about it because I think it opens up the door for programs that are right on the fringe, like a Penn State. But yeah, it's just a lot of games, man. I think national title game will be January 25th. That's like right up against NFL playoffs then, So
that's nuts. That's nuts.
Right. I thought it was already late, but so that's college ball. A couple things that I'm curious about, kind of coming back to XFL here. You took some pretty hard shots this season. First of all, how are you physically feeling after this like 15 to 16 week run that you just went through?
Yeah, I feel great now. I'd taken a shot in the Houston game and was able to play through. And I felt like I could have played in the Vegas game, but AB was he was such an unbelievable head coach this year. I mean, it was awesome to play for, and but he just said, "Listen, we can get by. We think this week." Without having you allow your body to heal some. And it helped me out. I got to spend some time with a good rehab clinic down there, TMI, and some really good PT guys. So, but now my body feels great. I'm back home. I really took a week off before I got back into the swing of things, and hung out with some buddies, went and played a lot of golf that week. And, so I'm feeling good now.
Awesome. Yeah, when I was in St. Louis for the tour, I saw Stoley, and first thing I asked him, I was like, "Is AJ gonna go?" And he's like, "Stand by. We're gonna have it soon." And I'm just like, let me be the week that I show up and AJ's not here. So yeah, he told me you weren't playing. Nick's out there going through warmups, and everyone's just kind of looking around the stadium like, "Where's AJ?" But it quickly came through the news what was going on, and hey, they might have needed a fake punt touchdown and some overtime, but they got the job done, and that ended up being one of the most electric moments all season in the XFL.
So it really was.
It was really cool to watch that game. So when you first decided that the XFL was going to be a go for you, was it always the St. Louis Battlehawks, or was there another team in the picture? How did that come about?
Yeah, it really was just St. Louis. I'd never gotten a call from anybody else. No other coaches reached out. I don't know, for whatever reason, but AB was, the one that reached out. He kept calling. And according to him, he called 3 times or reached out multiple times before I ever reached back out to him. So, but I was just in the moment of, I was doing a lot of work for ESPN, College Game Day, radio, and a couple digital shows. And so I was traveling a lot and away from the kids more than usual. And but he kept reaching out, and I got to talk to him multiple times and really learn what he was about, what type of coach he was. And that was a big thing for me is, listen, I like having a relationship with my coaches, like being able to pick up the phone, call them, just BS with them. And AB was that type. I mean, he's such a player's coach. He was unreal in that aspect. And then learning from there, all right, so if we do this, what type of offense are we running? And he introduced me to Bruce, and I had played against Bruce multiple times in the league. I had seen him, and so I knew we were in the same systems in the NFL. And for me, it was a no-brainer. It was like, all right, talking to Bruce now, let's link up. And I mean, really from the jump, we hit it off and started putting the offense together months before we even announced. So that was the biggest thing is, all right, hey, terminology standpoint, all right, I see we called it this. Great. That's the same thing we called it. And we ran this route this way, and we did this read this way. So it really linked up perfect. And I tell you what, Bruce is unbelievable when it comes to offensive mind for the game. And I think he has such a bright future. I can't wait for him.
So that's kind of how it all starts. Obviously, Hakeem Butler reaches out over DM. You're recruiting Austin Prohl. You got some other guys that the offense is coming together. You guys go through the season. You end up 7-3, or actually at the end of the season there, you're 6-3. You're told that your path to the playoffs is pretty slim, I assume, at that point. What was the understanding going into week 10? Like, what were you guys being told from the league, the coaches, whatever, about what exactly you had to do to have the best shot at making the playoffs in week 10?
Dude, I had to tell you what, for your viewers and listeners, like, I don't know how much praise you've gotten, but you were the savior of the league for that, from that aspect. And I'm not exaggerating one bit, because I can't tell you how many people were watching your podcast from even on the team and coaching staff, and hell, probably the league, because the league office, I think, was confused themselves. They had sent out multiple memos about, oh, it's this, and then them working with ESPN, and that side of it was all jacked up too. So we really, like, if it wasn't for you and me seeing you and watching you break it down and everything, and telling AB, like, hey, you might want to reach out to this dude, Matty. Like, he seems like he knows what he's talking about, and he's got everything broke down pretty well. And so then he ended up reaching out to you. But be honest with you, dude, we didn't have a freaking clue what the hell. Like, it was until you told us, all right, we got to score a bunch of points. We got to try to hold them to this amount of points to kind of balance it out. And so our thing was, hell, we're just going to go out and sling it. Like, Bruce was like, listen, are you good to throw it as many times as we need? And I'm like, let's do it. I said, hell, we've been putting up all these numbers, and we're not even an air raid offense, like, compared to these other teams. I'm like, let's come out and 5 wide a ton, and let's just do it. And so Bruce literally had an unbelievable game plan, and everybody just played their tails off, and everything matched up, and we had an unbelievable night, record breaking for sure.
Well, I appreciate that, first of all. And I'm not a math person whatsoever. I think my high school math teacher probably would have been shocked at some of the things that were going on. To me, it was just such a curiosity. It was like, how can you not know? How can you not want to know? Right. Like, and people were like, oh, we'll figure it out after the game. That wasn't enough to me. For me, it was like, I want to watch the game in real time, like possession by possession. And I kind of want to know. And I get it, right? Everybody's like, just win. you know, you have to focus on winning first. Obviously, you guys would have been automatically in with a Vegas win, but that's too easy. For me, it's like I got to know every scenario. There were things that could happen if both teams won. And I was like, we're not talking about that really.
Yeah.
So it all eventually got sorted out. But no, that means a lot, AJ, that you guys were paying attention. And that's a service that we figured we had to do for players, coaches, for fans. And it took some sleepless nights to plug the spreadsheets in and do all that. But at the end of the day, you know, we knew right at the end of that Seattle game what the case was. And for you guys to put up 53 and that 53 to get you exactly the same point differential on the season, it like, how do you go through 10 games and have the same point differential as a team? That's just unheard of. And the way it all went down, they'll literally make a documentary about it someday. And they can give me a call. I hope I'll be part of that. But 53 should have been enough. I mean, obviously the points against Battle was lost. The points for was won.
Yeah.
So it kind of balanced out. But exceptional performance, 420 yards, 6 touchdowns. You guys kind of left everybody wondering what would this team have done in the playoffs since you caught fire. I know Coach Saban came on last year during the SEC title, and he kind of made his case on national television. This is why you should put Alabama in the top 4. Well, AJ, what was your case as to why the St. Louis Battlehawks were one of the top 4 teams in the XFL and could have had a shot to make the playoffs and win a title?
Yeah, I really thought if we got in, we would win it. I truly did. You know, we were going to get a bunch of guys back from a defensive standpoint. That really hurt us in the end from on the defensive side is some key guys, Mike Rose, some guys in the secondary, Tim Harris that was battling injury most of the year, but and some other guys that were just nicked up and trying to play through stuff. And so they missed the last game. And I felt like, all right, if we can get in, they'll be back for this first round. I think we'll have our basically our whole team. Cause crazy thing is we were healthy on offense. And I think going into that last couple weeks, it started in Vegas where we kind of changed our mindset a little bit. And it was, hey, we're going to spread this thing out a little more. We're going to try to get our weapons the ball as quick as possible. And then also we're going to take our shots. And I think that was something that, whether it was not having a true camp together and then kind of getting thrown into the fire to where if you're not an air raid offense, like a lot of your deep stuff and your play action passes is built off timing, right? So from a timing standpoint up front, play fake to the amount of time you have blocking and then letting routes develop. So I really think we shifted and Bruce did an unbelievable job of saying, hey, we're going to spread this thing out. And we're going to throw it and make teams cover the field. And man, from Vegas and then to Houston and then missing the Vegas game and just having a bad game versus Seattle as an offense, coming back from injury and really just bad. We had a ton of penalties that game that kind of, when we got something going, it brought us right back. So we never found our momentum. And then going into the last game, it was everybody just playing loose and we're going out here and having fun. And I think if we could have just got to that point, we would have made a really good run at it. And hell, because we played DC close every time, and it always came down to the last couple of minutes of the game. So, but you know, it's hard in this business to go off coulda, shoulda, wouldas and stuff like that, and ifs. So, hell, DC's a great team, and they'll have a great shot at winning this thing now.
Yeah, and I know you guys were sharing a practice facility with them also. I know you got pretty creative at times, it seemed, with the offense this season. It's like you said, you guys had kind of a short camp together. I know there were some issues, especially at the beginning of the season with the radios and the comms. I frankly remember a game where I think you did a sideline interview. They said, oh, I'm getting the defensive calls, but I can't hear our calls. Like, what were the issues and what would you do to react when you kind of knew right away, okay, I can't really rely, I can't hear Bruce, or, you know, what do you do in that case with the offense?
I tell you, it was and this is why I praise Bruce so much. Like from the very first week, he was like, "Hey, 2 minute, we're going to install this thing, like all our plays. And once we get the whole offense installed, he's like, 2 minute, you're calling it." And I was like, "You what?" And he was like, "The whole thing." He's like, "Now, if you need me, I'll be there." He said, "But I want you calling it." And so from a practice standpoint, like I just called 2 minute. And it was really our basic offense. It's not like we had a 2 minute package or anything. And so it really helped when it came down to that Vegas game at Vegas. I kept hearing DA, our defense coordinator, and I kept hearing Donnie like talk, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, and they kept saying player check, and I'm like, why does Bruce keep saying? But then I'm like, all right, well, that ain't Bruce's voice. Like, well, why do they keep saying player check? And so I was like, all right, well, I know Bruce's mindset. I know what he likes to do, and what he's thinking in certain situations. So it was really just, hey, call it and go. And it was no panic, because like the first play came in, and I'm like, I remember AP being there, and I was like, what's the play? And the play clock's down to like 15, and he's like, "Are you not getting it?" I'm like, "No, I'm not getting it." So he told me the first play, and then after that, though, I just started waving to the sidelines and telling AB, I'm like, "Hey, I can't hear anything, so tell Bruce, like, don't tell the receivers anything, just let me call it, and we'll go," because I didn't want them getting a call from him and then running something different from what I'm calling. So yeah, it was the headsets this year were coming out of halftime. We had multiple games where the headsets wouldn't work coming out of halftime. Whatever they reset the headsets or something at halftime. Like there was multiple games where we didn't have headsets, so it was it's pretty interesting from that aspect.
Yeah, it causes some issues because you can't have one sideline have it and the other not. So there were times in the season where they came over and said, "All right, well, theirs is killed, so we got to cut yours." And obviously the opposing coach is like, "Well, how's this my fault? Now I can't talk to my guys." Like, but it's weird that you have wide receivers hearing calls. Obviously, as a quarterback and an OC, you want to have control of the offense. Now it's beneficial for a wide receiver to be able to hear it directly from the booth, but then you have miscommunication. So I was just curious about how that all went. I like the moment this season when Greg McElroy was calling one of your games, and he just knows the ins and outs of the position, and he's telling us all about different things. And you get a sideline interview, and you're kind of like, "Well, we can't tell you what that was." And Greg's up in the booth like, "We know what it was." Yeah. What was it like to be mic'd up? And do you think if you're a kid and you're watching the sport coming up, like maybe some of your boys, are you learning from that all access and are you taking things in, or is it all too kind of confusing to process for someone who doesn't play?
No, I think it's a cool deal with the XFL on doing that with quarterbacks and certain players. It was hard from my aspect because it was like, all right, my mom's going to hear the mic'd up version, and my wife's going to hear it. And they always talk about like, "Hey, watch your language." So that side of it was like, all right, I know I have to dial back a little bit and not get so pissed off in a certain situation and use this language. But from a learning standpoint, I thought it was really cool, and being able to hear the quarterbacks around the league talk, how they talk to certain guys, because that's one thing as a leader you have to learn and understand quick when you're playing the quarterback position is, all right, you might be able to talk to this one receiver a certain way, but you can't talk to this other receiver this way. You got to praise him and tell him, "Hey, it's going to be all right. You're going to make the next play." This other guy, you can, jump his butt and get on to him and say, "Hey, you got to make that play." So that side of it I thought was cool, just to hear other quarterbacks and how they talk to guys. But from a learning standpoint, I think it's awesome. I think you got to hear play calls and everything and try to break it down. And I thought every analyst that did that for the XFL up in the booth and on the sidelines, guys like Eric and Cole and Sam and Greg, I thought they did an unbelievable job of breaking that down and learning the offenses themselves, hearing the play calls week in and week out. And I thought that was really cool, the league doing that, though.
Yeah, it's definitely the future of football broadcasting. Like I mentioned this year, I'd love to see Peyton and Eli Manning sit down, with what they do with the Manning cast and break down an XFL game because you get that quarterback to coach communication.
Yeah.
Also, watching Aaron Rodgers my whole life, obviously I've been a big Packers fan. A lot of checks in that offense that he'll run. You did the one to Darius this year. You check out. Obviously, he runs the route. You guys score. So going into my next question here, talking XFL big picture going forward, I think you now have one of the biggest platforms and influences in the league. You tweeted April 23rd in response to Coach Beck that you'd love to play for this man. Can't wait for next year. So first off, what are your XFL 2024 plans? And if you do come back, what would you like to see upgrade to year 2?
Yeah, I'm kind of taking it, to be honest with you, Matt, is day by day. Listen, it's, of course, I'd love, because my goal was to play 10 years when I first came in as a rookie. All right, I want to play 10 years in the league. So, but I also want it to be a good situation. I don't want to just go to just anybody, but listen, I would like to be back in the league, and I think I shown this year, that I can still play at a very high level and lead an offense. So, but if it's not God's plan, like I have no problem coming back to play in the XFL. I thought it was an unbelievable experience, and I would love to sit down with the decision makers of the XFL and be able to say, hey, I think if we go this route, it'll help guys. How can we make the league better for players, for the fans? Because I think there are certain things that they can do. And then from, a living situation and from a medical side of it and nutrition and stuff, I think there's ways to grow. But for the first year of the league, coming back, like I thought it was an unbelievable experience. I really did. And I thought the league did an unbelievable job of, showing what the league was about, showing players their stories, and it was just an unbelievable experience and something that I will definitely, and my boys and the rest of family and friends, cherish for the rest of our lives for sure.
Absolutely. Part of history. And speaking for your position, obviously we're seeing a ton of this XFL to NFL stuff now. You guys have Darius, Hakeem, Austin, all kind of your teammates getting invited to mini camps. If just speaking from your position as a quarterback, if you're, let's say 3, 4, 5 years out of school, you get invited to camp, you miss the 53 man, maybe you get a P squad offer. How have your options changed in this football landscape if you're in that position now? And what advice would you give guys who are kind of weighing the options of whether they want to stick it out with a futures deal on practice squad, try to make it back to the 53 man, or go play spring football?
Yeah, I've talked to a certain amount of guys about that, and even I'm not going to put his business out there, but another quarterback in the XFL, and talked about, hey, if this doesn't work out, like he's like, listen, I'd love to come back and play in the XFL. So I think it frees up a lot of guys to not have the stress and anxiety side of it too, is going into these camps, like already being starstruck, and for some of these guys, and just so uptight because, oh, this is my opportunity. Like I got to make everything happen right now and play outside of yourself and end up having a bad camp. Right. So I think it allows guys to take a deep breath, relax. Hey, just go showcase what you've shown all year, go be yourself. And then if it doesn't work out, come back, get more film and get another opportunity, right? The following year. So I think it's going to allow guys to really be themselves and play more free and not having the stress of, everybody. I mean, it's like everyday people, when you get fired from your job and all of a sudden, all right, I got these bills. Like, what am I going to do next? Like, what's my next step? So I think it's going to allow guys to be themselves and play better ball.
What kind of impact do you think it'll make? Let's say if a quarterback was maybe mid-20s looking for that second contract, maybe they got drafted late round, looking for that second deal, been in and out of the league. Is it possible to go ahead and play like a full XFL season, go through camp, go through the 10-week grind, no bye weeks, tough living situation, obviously, just a mental focus that it requires, then go to camp, right? And now maybe you make the team, maybe you make the P squad and go through another, 6-7 months. Is that like, could you see yourself doing that back then? Is that something you would have committed to? And if so, how?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a grind. And it's something that, I mean, you got to love what you do. So I truly believe that guys will want to do that. And I think, like you said, I think you'll have guys that are on practice squads that don't sign future deals. And, hey, I want to get out here and show, for whatever reason, I was on this practice squad and wasn't able to make the team, like show what I can do and get a better opportunity. Because you see guys getting signed even from the USFL. The returner for Dallas ended up being a Pro Bowler. So I think you're going to see more guys take that route and not just sign future deals, and we'll be able to showcase teams around the league what they can do.
Yeah, it can definitely only go up from here. Obviously, the XFL doing a great job of highlighting too, like, hey, here's our guys that are getting invited to mini camps. I hope they continue that throughout the fall and really highlight these players in the offseason and really champion these guys. Well, AJ, it's been a pleasure. Again, our Freshie Award winner for Offensive Player of the Year. We gave you best tandem with Hakeem Butler and also our most valuable player. Just a phenomenal season, what you're able to put together, not only from the product on the field, but I think some of the things that you did off the field were really special as well. And obviously memories that you'll never forget. And the rest of the country following along in this all access format, we get to hear more of your story. So great to have you on. Thank you for joining us on Springball Boulevard. You're a friend to us now. We'll catch up with you at some point. Best of luck here in the off season and coming up. If you have NFL plans, if you have plans to come back, whatever you do, you're a friend of us. And I'm sure all the XFL guys are going to love seeing whatever you do here in the future.
I appreciate you, Matty. And dude, you have an unbelievable show, and you earned a lot of viewers, just players around the league, coaches. I mean, you do unbelievable work, and we got to get you a St. Louis jersey. I'm gonna get our equipment guy Todd to send you a St. Louis jersey so we can get one in the back. But I appreciate you, brother, and hell, hopefully we can do this again soon.
Back on the Boulevard. Thank you again, AJ. Going to have to try to get together soon and do something maybe about this XFL championship game coming up. I know AJ played against both these teams. Might have to get his thoughts as part of our championship week coverage. You're going to want to stay tuned for that. But for now, thanks to AJ McCarron, all of his coaches, his teammates, his wonderful family for putting him in the position they did. And we got to interview him finally. AJ McCarron on the Boulevard. Been a long time coming for that one. Speaking of AJ, a lot of offense that went into his XFL season. So how about our All-Boulevard team for the offensive side of the ball, Zook? Let's go ahead and start out with his group. AJ, in our opinion, was the quarterback. We're going to highlight some offensive linemen here as well. Steven Gonzalez, the former Nittany Lion. And for those who remember, the first ever Spring Ball Series guest on the Boulevard getting nabbed all XFL team. Congratulations, Steven, for that one. Mike Horton. How about that? Arlington. Getting some guys up front. Liam Ryan played every single snap for DC this season. He was a stud. Colin Kelly from Seattle, manning that right tackle spot. I think he played a little left tackle, keeping Ben DiNucci upright. DiNucci gave these guys a lot of praise in his press conference, talking about how little he was sacked, and a lot of that had to do with this running ability. But Kelly held his own. And Alex Millette in Houston, the center, saw a lot of action this year. Those are our 5 offensive linemen. The Hog Mollies do not get enough credit up front. They are our All-Boulevard team up front. Now to the skill position guys. How about the receivers? No brainer on this one. Peasy. Had to go with your core. Hakeem Butler as well. XFL leader in touchdowns. We talked about him with AJ. And Lucky Jackson, Our All-Boulevard team, very similar to the All-XFL team that the league announced today. But we did want to highlight these three guys. Lucky Jackson, just a phenomenal back half of the season. Two of these three have been invited to NFL camps. Lucky still waiting on his because he can't be yet. Got to play one more game. Moving on to the quarterbacks. How about AJ? First team, all XFL in our book. Cody Latimer, winner of our Freshie Award for most NFL ready. He'll be getting a camp invite soon, I'm sure. And Abram Smith, no denying him. Spent some time with the New Orleans Saints last season before getting cut. First overall pick in the XFL draft, and he absolutely lights it up this year with about 300 more rushing yards than anybody else had. That is our All-Boulevard team on the offensive side of the ball. Zook, some more questions for me.
Yes, sir. Which wide receiver invited to a camp can make the most impact in the NFL?
Wow. I think Hakeem Butler. He was a nominee for our most NFL ready. Wow. Receivers. Peasy is going to be an interesting one. I think Ja'Cour Pearson invited to 49ers minicamp. Ja'Cour Pearson returned some punts and kicks when he was in college, but he also played in a Western Kentucky offense that saw high volume. He was actually there, I think, with Lucky Jackson too. But Pearson is one where his route running and his hands are off the charts. I could see him filling in the slot. But that size is hard to deny. I know Hakeem Butler's was a former Philadelphia Eagle at one point. They actually played him at tight end. So you see these tight ends, even in this year's NFL draft, the tight end, Dalton Kincaid, who went off the board first, is probably going to play more slot than he is actual tight end. So, yeah, I mean, we're talking receivers, so we got to talk Cody Latimer as well. There's a couple.
Okay, so I know we both agree that special teams is probably the spot that most guys can land from the XFL.
Got to have that special teams pedigree.
So give me a top three of special teamers.
Well, special teamer. This is tough because I don't know if, like Austin Prohl, right? He's one where he was returning punts. He's a very sure-handed receiver. He gets invited to Panthers and Eagles minicamp. He's one where I could see just being a dog on special teams. Oh, man, who else? Top three. Darius Shepard has to be plug in right away, and he's seen a few NFL stops as well. But Shepard, obviously, very versatile, can really do it all. And how about John Lovett? I'm going to go John Lovett as a guy who showed us a ton of versatility this year. Caught passes out of the backfield and also caught passes as a receiver and ran between the tackles. So he was a kind of Swiss Army knife. He didn't play much on special teams, but I think he'll be plugged right into the special teams if he makes the NFL. So,
do you think McKnight's on the bubble?
Kelvin McKnight. See, I wonder with Kelvin McKnight, with being in a loaded Seattle receiver room, if that special teams film is going to stick out enough, or that's why I'm kind of going, when you're asking this question, I'm kind of going off the radar because I don't know if, even with a guy like Darius Shepard, like, will NFL scouts look at that film and say, okay, our special teams is very different, right? You don't have the opportunities to return kicks and punts like you do in the XFL. So when we're watching film from these guys like Darius Shepard, are they more utilized in open space, period? Because, you know, in the punt return game in the NFL, you more or less want your guy to catch the ball, right? Just don't muff it.
Right.
In
so
the
this
XFL,
this wasn't on my list, but now that you're getting into that, do you think the NFL will ever adopt the kickoff rules?
Yeah, I wanted to ask AJ about some of the rules. We got lost in that conversation, and I wanted to ask him if some should be implemented. But yeah, you would think the kickoffs, I think we've been saying since the beginning of the year, 35% of kickoffs are returned in the NFL, give or take. The XFL had about 90%. Yeah, it absolutely should be. Some people don't like it, though, because it looks weird. You know, when you line up for kickoff, you got your guys 5 yards apart. But it does. You avoid high-speed collisions that way, and you get some good kick returns. Now, I can tell you right now, NFL traditionalists and fans and people who like it their way, the old school crowd, they're not going to want the ball coming out to the +40. if that thing goes. Like, that will drive people insane. I love that. I think you should be penalized for kicking the ball out of bounds. It's very easy to practice making sure you keep a kick in bounds, and it's not egregious to me if a kicker kicks the ball out of bounds. That's something that's almost like a penalty of like an unsport. Like, that's just a boneheaded play.
Right.
Like, if you did that, you might as well shank it. So I do. I think that should be implemented, but it won't be. But maybe the kickoff style.
Yeah. Okay.
bit.
So the style, maybe not the whole.
I think it would take a
whole
couple
part.
of years. Like, there's some things the NFL will test out, I think, before that one. I think a lot of the instant replay is going to be the first one. Okay, how does the XFL centralize their instant replay? We want to do that.
See, it's a lot harder for the NFL though, because there's so many games going on at the same
Can you
time.
imagine that?
So you don't have one guy
Yeah.
that's your NFL replay guy because
no standalone game pretty much except Monday night and Sunday night, I guess.
Right.
So
yeah,
that'd be
that's a
tough.
little weird, but
Right.
I would like to see that implemented for sure.
I think that would be the first one they would consider. The challenges is another one where I think you're going to see that eventually in the NFL, where a coach can challenge anything, regardless of
I know that, but they tried that with OPI and DPI.
Yeah, right.
And they didn't like it. They got rid of it.
Wonder if they opened it up to everything. But yeah, there's some, like, the NFL's not going to adopt the 4th and 15. It's not.
Right. And that's fine. It's a favorite rule of mine in the XFL, but
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. I want to see the kickoffs, though.
Yeah.
So I think they could play around with where they kick it from, because I'm just tired of seeing people kick it out of the back of the end zone.
Flashback.
What's the point?
Flashback, yeah,
Why
it's-
don't you just start at the 20
Right.
instead of kicking the ball at all?
It's a complete waste of time for everybody, and you
Right.
have a commercial before it and then a commercial after it, and it's just
Maybe
like,
that's why.
we didn't see anything.
Is
Yeah.
that why?
We really didn't see a thing. I
Mm.
mean, we saw two commercial breaks and a kick go through the uprights, basically. So these
Sure.
NFL kickers can boot it 70, 80 yards. So
All
yeah,
right.
I would like to see that.
Last question. This is a two-part question. So, as of right now, from what I've seen, there's only 4 QBs invited to camp: DiNucci, Montez, Frost, and Cone. Who else besides AJ should be invited to a camp?
Well, isn't that crazy that there's 3 Seattle guys? That's interesting. I think Harrison Frost was one we had on our radar a little bit because he was one of the few draft eligible players. He actually could have been drafted. Jordan, got to be Jordan Ta'amu. He'll definitely get a camp invite. Who else are we looking at in the XFL to get a camp invite at quarterback?
How about Perez? Does he get an invite?
I guess we'll see how he plays. No, I mean, Luis Perez was with the Rams for a short time. I wonder if he'll be put in a box as a spring football quarterback. He's played in every league for a reason. You and I had talked about a guy like Steven Montez before the show and how he really didn't see any action. I think he had 1 snap this entire season, but he's back in camp. That's because he played so well in college and he's got that NFL quarterback build to him, and there's going to be teams that want him as their scout team quarterback, practice squad. Perez, oh man, I don't know. I think Luis Perez is getting better and better and better, and he's going to be an elite spring football quarterback, but practice squad is probably the ceiling in the NFL. And if you look at the quarterbacks right now in the league, there was just a lot more drafted. So, yeah, I think he gets the invite, but I think he would rather play spring football than play a practice squad.
So part 2 of the question is, and you kind of already touched on it, why did all 3 Seattle quarterbacks get an invite?
I think it's more about the individual than it is about like, oh, they were all Dragons, right? Like, I think the Dragons obviously had a high-flying offense that doesn't really translate to the NFL. But if you look at it from the other perspective, that's definitely an accomplishment for the Seattle Sea Dragons organization to have all 3 quarterbacks invited to mini camps. Now, looking at the individuals, though, Ben DiNucci obviously had played for Dallas. He's a guy right on the fringe, probably won't make the 53-man, but he'll have a really good chance to compete for it. Might just fall short. It depends if a team wants to keep 3 quarterbacks. He could be quarterback 3 and then eventually work his way up throughout the season. With Montez, he's a guy who bounced around in the NFL a little bit. Again, really big, right? I think he's like 6'4", 230, something like that. And he showed some stuff at Colorado that they're definitely going to want him as a scout team quarterback to emulate different players in the league that they'll be going against because he has that frame. Harrison Frost is one that I was surprised. I think he was draft eligible. And he's one of the youngest players in the XFL. I think there was only 3 guys who weren't really pros. They had come out of college and decided to go right to the XFL. I'm guessing with him, it was like a developmental thing. And he wanted to play in the XFL just for the sole purpose of developing and learning and getting this opportunity. So, yeah, not a bad gig, right? Getting paid to develop. So I think Harrison Frost is probably going to be back in the XFL. In fact, if DiNucci and Montez move on, you may see Harrison Frost back on the Seattle Sea Dragons. But we'll give him a shot in rookie minicamp. I know, what school did Harrison Frost come out of? Now you got me curious. West Georgia. So is that West Georgia? Is that D2 or is that F? I think that might be Division 2. So that'll be an interesting one. I'm interested to see Frost. 21 years old, invited to NFL minicamp.
Do you think those two playing with DiNucci helped them at all?
DiNucci to me is the same age as Montez, so I don't think so. I think the better help was June Jones.
Okay.
And the staff there, even potentially Jim Haslett, who's more of a defensive-minded coach, but to just have that leadership. DiNucci's young. I mean, you have to remember he's 25, so he's been a leader by example. Obviously, played all those years in college, played for Pitt, played for JMU. But I think Steven Montez being in the same draft class, coming in and saying, listen, DiNucci he beat him out for the starting job in the XFL. He's the better quarterback. But don't forget, Steven Montez was on more NFL teams. Steven Montez was with the Commanders and the Lions, where DiNucci only had one shot with the Cowboys. So Montez just maybe not a fit for this offense, but you get him going, and I think he'll be a decent scout team option. Harrison Frost definitely benefited from playing under Ben DiNucci because he's raw and he hasn't had much experience in the pros. So, yeah, I think all 3 of these guys will be interesting to keep an eye on. But that DC quarterback room as well with Jordan and De'Aaron. De'Aaron King could be an asset in the NFL. We'll have to see what happens there. Anything else from me, Zook, before we wrap her up tonight?
That's it. Wrap it up.
All right. For Chris Zook in the control room, I am Matty Fresh. Thank you for listening to Springball Boulevard, for watching, for chatting along with us. Make sure you drop us a like on the video, subscribe to the channel. Thank you again, AJ McCarron. Great to sit down and catch up with him. Great conversation for 35, 40 minutes tonight, which is really what we wanted to give you a deep dive into AJ's reflections on the XFL. And we have our XFL championship game coming up Saturday, a full preview on Thursday for you. So always remember, there is no such thing as football season. We'll see you Thursday night for our title preview. See you then.